Okay guys, as you can probably tell, I am in the middle of, or was in the middle of, prepping this test bench for another run at some extreme overclocking numbers. We've got our 2080 Ti's of choice, we've got our full custom loop set up with a 480mm radiator, we've got a D-lidded 7980XE, even got my little tunnel that I set up for plumbing my AC unit directly over top of the GPUs. But we're not setting any records right now, and that's because I think that I just blew up the EVGA X299 dark motherboard that I was using, and I'm not quite sure where to go from here, but we're going to try to make some lemonade out of these awful, awful lemons. So let's see what we can make happen.
We're here on the street asking people, would you prefer the car on the right or the car on the left, which comes with a Meshify S2?
Dude, what's even going on here? The Lamborghini.
There you go. People prefer the Meshify S2.
While Brian's performance may be a bucket of fail, the new Meshify S2 is performance-driven. Visit our website to learn more.
So what was going on was I was basically just kind of getting ready, getting everything ramped up and put together to try to take another shot at TimeSpy Extreme. I had both of these GPUs installed on the bench. I had the custom loop set up with 4.6 gigahertz overclock on the 7980XE. I had a mild overclock on both of these cards. I wasn't pushing anything just yet, but I was just kind of testing for initial stability. I hadn't even run any tests, but I decided that I wanted to utilize the supplemental 6-pin PCIe power connector that is at the bottom of the X299 dark motherboard. It provides additional PCIe power to the graphics cards and allows them to potentially overclock higher. I hadn't had that plugged in until this point, so I shut everything down, plugged in a PCIe power connector to the bottom side of the board, turned everything back on, and I literally heard a pop and started smelling electrical smoke. So clearly I just cut the power to everything immediately, unplugged everything that I could, and I was kind of really worried that I had fried my graphics cards, and I was hoping that it was just the $500 motherboard. And to be honest, that is what it turned out to be, but I removed the graphics cards, I tested them each individually, they work. And the reason that I know that it's actually the PCIe slots that got fried was because these cards won't even light up at all when I have them plugged in and I have the power on, whereas when I put them in any other board and try them out, obviously, not only do they light up, but they work just fine. So while I'm not entirely sure of exactly what happened, I am reasonably certain that it has something to do with that supplemental 6-pin PCIe power connector. I didn't have a problem with it before. I actually had utilized that in my previous extreme overclocking attempts to provide some additional power here, and I never had any issues. What I think might be the problem is I'm actually now using two power supplies because these GPUs draw significantly more power than my initial configuration, and perhaps there was something wrong with the second power supply, or the board didn't like receiving its power from two different sources. I don't know for sure, but this board is toast. And I've tried several different configurations and several different things to get it working again, and no go. There's no power at all going to the PCIe slots. I don't think there's any signal going to them at all, and I don't think this board is salvageable in any way. So what I'm going to have to try is a different X299 board, and I don't have another dark on hand, so I want to try the new Asus Deluxe Prime Deluxe 2. It's their new all-white X299 board. I was actually going to use it in my personal system at some point, so this will be a good test to see if it actually works and can get some good overclocks out of the chip and out of these cards, and we'll see what kind of scores we get. But press F for the EVGA X299 Dark because this thing is done. Sorry, buddy, you served me well. Okay, so we are back in business. Let me just briefly show you around, I guess, the setup, how I'm going to do things this time around, what I had to change, and some challenges that we're probably going to be facing using this new configuration. Here is the disaster area, basically, but you can see I have one camera over there, one camera over there. I haven't yet started filming properly just yet after rebuilding the rig, but I wanted to just kind of show you how I have things set up while Indy goes to town on a bone over there. So this is the AC unit. It acts as a makeshift chiller, and right now I actually only have one of the two outlets running. This is just capped off because I wanted to focus on CPU for now. So let's go over here and I'll show you how the CPU is hooked up. So this outlet tube plumbs into this box down here. It's kind of a makeshift isolating chamber for the air that's being pushed through this 480 millimeter radiator with 4 Silent Wings fans on top. And then the entire system is obviously run through the soft tubing to the 7980XE, which is underneath that EK block down there. Still the same memory kit that we had before. It's a 4x8 gig kit of G.Skill Trident Z DDR4 4000. And one of the things that I've discovered about this new motherboard is actually that I could run this memory at 4000. Now on the dark board, maybe the memory compatibility was not quite as good because I can only run it at 3600, I believe. So just in some initial testing, this runs at 4000, which is great. We might even be able to push it higher. I'm not quite sure yet. But I haven't run anything crazy, just kind of making sure that things work. So this is what's going to keep the CPU cool. It's the same setup as last time. I did kind of modify my pump setup just to make it easier to fill and drain with a tiny reservoir on top, but that doesn't matter at all. So let's swing around and look at the GPU config right now. So I'm pretty sure that this setup is just going to be faster because now it has RGB. But one of the issues that I'm facing with this board is obviously the EVGA X299 Dark is set up for extreme overclocking and SLI configs, whereas maybe this one is not, because the spacing of the PCIe slots is either 3 slot, which is how we have it set up right now, or 5 slot, and I don't believe an NVLink bridge exists that's 5 slots for this generation of RTX cards. So I have it set up right now in a 3 slot config, which means that there is just no room in between them. So getting some cool air in there is going to be a real challenge. The For the Win card should be just fine, but the Hall of Fame card might just be choked off to oblivion. I don't really know how I'm going to rectify that. I actually tried putting a PCIe riser card and separating them a little bit, just by shifting this one down. And because of the way the PCIe riser card plugs into the bottom of this, it created too much of a height discrepancy, because as you can see already, the NVLink bridge is already kind of diagonal. This is kind of teetering on the brink of not touching all the contacts at this point. So if I raised this up any further, it wouldn't work. And if I switch their position, because this is higher than this, if the bridge then has to go in this direction and go over this high point, it won't contact this at all. So I have to have the Hall of Fame card as the first card and this as the second card, and I guess I have to run it this way. I'm not going to be able to connect it any other way, any other spacing. So that's unfortunate, and I think we might be limited as far as how far we could push these cards now, because there's just no airflow in between them. Look how tight they are. That's not a good thing. So, all right, well, we might as well get to running some tests. The initial round is going to be CPU only, seeing how far we can push the CPU, and then we'll start messing with the GPUs and go from there. Briefly, let me just touch on why I'm doing this, because I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, you're just doing this because Jay and Steve started to do their Rip GN, Rip Steve series again. And that's not true. I actually had the idea to try this again maybe a month or two ago when I decided that I was going to be able to pick up a delidded 7980XE and a Hall of Fame 2080 Ti. I figured like that would be a really good point to see if we can improve on our initial score. And kind of just compete against myself, see if I could break that 14,000 point barrier, which I wasn't able to do the first time around. And when I saw that they had reignited their feud, it was cool because I was like, all right, people are still interested in this, but at the same time, I didn't want people to think that I was trying to compete against what they were doing, because I can't, and I'm not going to try. I'm not using any kind of exotic cooling LN2, dry ice, or even what Steve's doing with ice buckets and whatnot. I don't have the facilities to be able to do that kind of stuff, so I'm just sticking with what I have and trying to best myself and see if I can do better than I had done before. And not to mention that actually when I was at CES and I was up in the EVGA suite, Jay was up there also, and we were all talking, me, Jay, and Jacob from EVGA. And Jacob actually asked me why I didn't get into it a little more than I had before. And, you know, I gave him the same answer. I don't have the capability at this time, the facilities to actually go out and make a rig that would be competitive with what they were doing. So I did the best that I could, and both Jay and Jacob actually kind of encouraged me. They're like, hey, why don't you give it another try, or you should try again, or I don't forget the exact wording. But so that kind of validated what I had thought that I wanted to do anyway. So that's what we're doing here today, and let's see if we can crack that 14,000 point barrier. Just as a reminder, this is my previous high score, 13,932. And if we scroll down and look at the details, or the score detail, result details, there we go. That means a graphics score of 14,550 and a CPU score of 11,233. So I hope to be able to improve on both of these and get up above 14,000. When I initially did this test, right now I'm in 36th and Paul's in 37th. We were both in the top 10. I think I was 5th and Paul was 6th at one point. So clearly there's been a lot of movement up here, a lot of people getting in on the exotic cooling action, and Jay and Steve are still up in the top 10 because they're crazy. But we're just going to see if we could do better than what we had done before, better than this 13,932. And we're going to start with CPU first. Let's see what we could do with our new D-lidded chip. My other 7980XE, without a D-lid, without a custom copper IHS, can actually hit 4.9 gigahertz across all cores, and that's what I was running at before in the initial run of this test. So I'm hoping that this one's going to be a little bit better, and I've actually set it to 4.8 just as kind of a starting point. You can see right here we're at 4,800 megahertz. Temps right now are in the teens with our AC unit running and our 480 millimeter radiator. So let's see what 4.8 gigahertz gets us. Don't forget also that we are running our DDR4 at 4,000 megahertz, so that's going to give us a significant leg up as well. Let's see what the CPU score is at 4.8 with 4,000 megahertz memory. 4.8 gigahertz gets us 11,043, which is really, really close to what we were capping out at last time, which was 11,233. 11,233. So this is at 4.8. Let's just go for it. Let's go for 5 gigahertz and see if we can pull that off, and then go from there. Well, we booted, which is always a good sign. Running at 5 gigahertz all cores, and we're stable kind of around 20 degrees Celsius right now. So let's run it and see what happens. All right, that didn't work. Let's try upping the voltage a little bit. All right, well that crashed too. We try to go up a little bit more. Right, we're at 1.385 volts for now. So let's try to go to 1.4, and then we'll try something else.
2 hours later.
At this point, I've been at this for, I'd say, a good couple of hours, and unfortunately, I still haven't been able to get 5 gigahertz to work on this chip in this board, and I don't think at this point that it is going to be achievable, to be honest. A couple factors kind of play into that, but it might just be that this board isn't as good of an overclocking board as the Dark is, which I guess is pretty obvious. Might be that the chip is not quite as good as I thought maybe it would be with the D-lid and the copper IHS. I've tried basically voltage stepping from 1.3 volts all the way up to 1.5 volts, basically in 0.005 volt increments. So, I mean, I've basically spent quite a lot of time trying to get 5 gigahertz to work, and it just won't. The system will boot every single time, but I get a couple seconds into the time spy test and it just crashes. So the fastest I could get this to run, and I've even tried like 5 gigahertz on 1 core or 2 cores or 4 cores, etc. None of that works either. If any cores are clocked at 5 gigahertz, it will not complete. So I'm stuck at 4.9 gigahertz, and another problem that I'm running into with this board is that because this board is not configured for extreme overclocking like the Dark was, the lowest AVX offset that you can configure in the BIOS is 1. You can't go to 0, which means that when you run an AVX instruction set like Time Spy, you're automatically reducing your clock speed by 100 megahertz. So even though this is now clocked at 4.9 gigahertz with faster RAM than I was at before, my total Time Spy scores are actually lower because 4.9 gigahertz in Time Spy actually equates to 4.8 gigahertz. So running into a couple of issues. So I'm not quite sure if we could really do very much more with this current configuration. And I am a little bit worried about the spacing with the GPUs as far as keeping them cool. But I just went for a walk. I walked my dog, and it's 28 degrees out here right now. So I'm kind of thinking that maybe I'll just toss this entire thing outside. Like there's a door right there, and see what happens. Maybe that will actually help things. It'll definitely help with the GPU temperatures, and maybe that'll work. Maybe I'll get 5 gigahertz out of that, and then we'll try to overclock our GPUs. I don't know. Let's try it. Let's give it a whirl. All right. Well, this is something new for the channel, right, Indy? So here is my monitor and keyboard setup, and there is my system outside. Not focusing very well. Sorry about that. I actually don't want to open the door because I have it propped closed right now because it won't close all the way because of the cables that are coming in. But there it is. It's outside, and it is 28 degrees out. So, yeah, let's hope we get some good temperatures out of this. This is something I've never tried before. Man, this video has gone off the rails. Completed. 5 gigahertz. Check this out. 5 gigahertz right here, running at a chilly mid-teens with a Time Spy CPU score of 11,453, which is about 200 points higher than my previous best. So we're going to leave this at this CPU setting and then go for GPUs now. Our first run crashed on the CPU test, but it just passed with the same setting, so I'm confident that if we run it, I don't know, 1 or 2 more times, hopefully we get that to complete. But the graphics score was 15,065, which is higher than what we had. Oop, didn't mean to do that. With settings of, this is the Hall of Fame card, 1129 on the memory, 120 offset on the core, and then the this is the For the Win 3 card, 1055 on the memory and 112 on the core. So kind of conservative numbers for now, and we still beat our previous best score. So if we could get this test to complete, I think we're looking good. This has been such a crazy and unexpected day, but we finally have 6 or 7 hours after I started making this video, our first completed Time Spy Extreme run, and I finally cracked 14,000. Yeah. 14,224. An improvement of about 300 points over where we were before. Graphics score of 14,965 and a CPU score of 11,110. I think both of these can ultimately be improved, especially with this system sitting outside right now and it being 28 degrees out there. So, but this video has gone on way longer than I had initially anticipated. We did what we set out to do. We broke 14,000. So I'm gonna cut this right here. Thanks so much for spending so much time with me today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video a little bit and you know, liked watching me destroy a $500 motherboard. Unfortunately. All right, See you guys later. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the like and all that stuff. Do the YouTube thing. See you guys later.